Our guests today are writer-director Lasse Noer and Christian Norlyk. Now, Lasse Noer graduated from the Film and Photo School of Copenhagen, and in 2015 he co-founded the production company Jalabert Production along with Christian Norlyk in order to have more control in the making of his films. He has since then written and directed all over the world, both for commercial clients and musicians. Now, Christian Norlyk, the producer behind Jalabert Productions, embarked on his career journey in 2008 while still in high school. And he started by creating a series of low-budget short films. Now, much of his professional work has been seen internationally. Their short film, Night of Fortune, is about the loss of a loved one, the grief and a coffin that is too much for the main character, Karl, to face. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Lasse Noer and Christian Norlyk and their Oscar shortlisted short film, Night of Fortune, to the show. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What
Glad
a great,
to be here.
great introduction.
Well, you're very, very welcome. But I have to say, Night of Fortune is an absolute beautiful story. It's a beautiful film. And Lasse, what inspired you to write this film?
Yeah, it's actually quite a personal story to me. I was at a time where I had lost some people very close to me, so I got to spend a lot of time at the hospital morgue, which is not a very pleasant place, to say the least. It's very cold, sterile, and unwelcoming, and the only warmth sort of comes from the relatives you have around you. And I had relatives to sort of support me in my grief, but I was thinking, what if you don't have that? What if you don't have anyone to support you? And then that will mean you will be completely alone. And that is sort of one of my biggest fears, I guess, being completely alone. And when you deal with a character like Karl, he's a practitioner, he's a fixer. He'd much rather fix a lamp than deal with his grief. So that's so hard for him to sort of cope with, his grief and sort of opening up about it. Yeah.
And what about you, Christian? What inspired you about this story that you wanted to see this film get made?
Well, me and Les have been working together since we went to high school. So we've been making films since we were kids, basically, or at least writing and aspiring to make them. And usually how we go about it is Les will have some ideas, and we like to, I know for Les, it's important that it has like this personal angle. Like you say, write about what you know, but it's also like it has to come deep within for him to connect to the story and for him to go that extra mile. And when he pitched like years ago now, he pitched like a few ideas, and it like when I heard this one, it struck something with me, because like grief is universal. We all go through grief, and we all have like this personal connection to it. But what struck me the most was like the amount of all the feelings that you have are okay feelings, even laughter. So you won't connect grieving to anything funny, right? But still, you would be surprised. We talked about this a lot, like within the like in Denmark, you say goodbye as a family in the room to the person, and it's not unbecoming to hear a joke about the traffic being made, like, and it's like, so the feelings are close connected, and I think that's what, to me at least, makes Night of Fortune unique, is that, you know, in between, like funny feeling that are allowed as well, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think the laughing and the humor and grief is sort of two sides to the same coin, right? It's something, when you laugh, it's a relief. So it's sort of a defense mechanism in some way, and so that's also a big part of this film, of course, the humor and the absurdity in it.
It is. And with the character Karl, when he enters, now set the setting for us, because I don't know, it's possible that the customs, let's say in Denmark, are different than here in America. Here in America, if someone passes away, the family doesn't get to see the body until it's already been taken to the funeral home and prepped. So the family never goes to the morgue at the hospital unless they're only there to identify the body. So if someone passes away in their hospital bed, then the next step is they're not going to see their loved one until they get to the funeral home that they choose.
Okay.
But in Denmark, explain this setting. So is this the morgue in the hospital, and is that how it starts, let's say, in Denmark?
Yeah, it is. Most of the time it is. If you die from an illness, or if you die suddenly, that's where you sort of go to see the body for the first time, and also go to say goodbye for the last time. This is also where you can dress the body up for the funeral and these things. Yeah. So that's the first meeting you normally get.
And it can be very soon after the person like takes his last breath. It's quite normal for the family, the closest family, of course, because you will have a funeral, you will have that whole thing like you guys do. But this is like the first time where the closest relatives get together and say their goodbye. So it's a very, very intimate, very private, and I know, like we talked about this and a lot. It's a big experience. Like the first time you try it, and every time.
Well,
Obviously.
I was wondering because my own father was a funeral director for years, and he would say he would, as I was a kid growing up, he would say that there are so many different customs to learn. It could be based on culture, it could be based on religion, but to make sure that family and their, if whatever religion or culture, is taken care of and respected. And so when I saw the setting at the very beginning of this film, I was like, okay, what is this room? And with Karl, the door opens, the coffin is in that room. He didn't know how to handle his grief because he was the one that's all by himself. Like let's say you just said, what would happen if someone's completely by themselves? There's no family. It's just the one person having to deal with this. And the only thing he could focus on to try to, I guess, emotionally run away from grief was focusing on the flickering light. And even the doctor behind him was surprised that he would say, I can fix it. He was looking for an excuse, or I guess an emotional or mental way of escaping. Did I get that right?
Yeah, completely right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then your friend, oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, you have these people in your life as well. Like we all do, these stoic people that again, when it becomes too private, it's like, oh, there's a broken lamp. Like I can fix that, but I can't fix the feelings I'm feeling right now. Essentially,
Yeah.
If
Well,
I'm not
yeah,
mistaken.
and you have a film, and I find this rare. You have a film that is so complete in its storytelling, in its framing, the cinematography, the setting, the light. I mean, everything blends so well. The room, it's cold, it's lifeless. And then in your film, there's a frame where the light is hanging down because Karl tried to fix it and it fell from the ceiling. But then right behind him, you framed his wife's coffin from end to end as if he is not going to be allowed to escape grief. He is going to have to turn around and face this moment in his life, and he's trying to find a way to run away from it. And to me, this makes your film so powerful, telling the story about grief.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So, it was nice of you to see that the sort of, we tried to, we had the lamp here and we had the coffin down below, right? And it's sort of the symbol of this sort of devastation he has to go through, right? So you said it perfectly. I'm glad you
Well,
saw that.
well, and tell us about the character Torben.
Yeah, Torben is a character that he's never gotten to say goodbye. So he's completely devastated by not he's not had the chance to go through what Karl is about to go through. Um, but he's also the helper that's gonna help Karl, because he's sort of pulling Karl in, because he's seeking forgiveness. And he wants the forgiveness from other people also, because he can't really forgive himself. So he's pulling Karl towards him, and Karl is in the beginning pushing Torben away. So that's what I love about this dynamic about these two. And he's also sort of this helping ghost at this moment, right?
Well,
he's,
he is, because, and I love the contrast of the two characters, because Karl, like you said, he's dealing with grief, or trying to deal with the grief, but he is going to get closure in the end when he faces it. But then, like Torben, he's still dealing with grief, but he struggles to find a way to get closure because he's never seen his wife's body. Both are trying to move on, but Torben becomes this compassionate soul to Karl. And like you said, in a way, kind of like a ghost. It's almost
yeah,
like Torben is delivering this grace and this mercy that's going to help Karl, because he can see his wife. So the contrast between the two is, I'm almost hoping some way, somehow, that you're going to take these two characters and expand this film even more, because I would love to see this story continue.
And it's pretty. We talk about this a lot with having the two characters in a short film. You have such a short time to do it. And what I love about the Torben character is something. So we went to many morgues, like in preparation for this, location scouting, like met with the people, heard the stories, and again to tell it right, because like Lasse was for months like engraved in this research of grief and how to deal with, which is not in any way like a fun research. It's pretty demanding, right? And thus we went to different small cities in Denmark, rural towns, and we visited different morgues. And one of them, we met this guy. He had worked there for 40 years. And what struck the both of us was like he was so warm, and when he told the stories, he got so emotional. And we were thinking, like, we asked him. I think you asked him the question, like if it wasn't too tough, like if you're that emotionally invested. And he said, like, if I'm not that emotionally invested, I couldn't do this job. And it was his story about this Polish woman that inspired some of the Torben character, because it's a thing when you don't say goodbye, when you don't open the casket and say your goodbyes, you have a hard time like letting go of that grief. You have a hard time moving on without that
yeah,
goodbye.
because that person could be out out in the world. You could meet that person just around the corner, right? You would always
And
have, you know.
well, and the thing is, and I've heard stories. And see, what I loved about the gentleman that you had talked to, who had worked in the morgue for 40 years, a lot of people would end up living behind a wall to protect themselves against the emotions of that job. And it'd just be a job day in and day out. But this gentleman that you talked about, he invested his emotion in this because he thought it was important for the families. And see, here in America, if someone, let's say there was an accident, or a body's never been found, a family will usually have a funeral or a memorial service and literally bury an empty casket, just trying to get closure. But I've had people tell me, and they probably told both of you as well, they could be at home because there's not that closure, sometimes they had that feeling as if that person is going to walk through the door at any moment.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that what
yeah,
you have heard from others?
yeah, exactly. And also to come back to what you said before with Torben helping Karl, that he's in some way he gets closure by helping Karl in the end. Not real closure maybe, but he's beginning to get there because they're sort of connected in this weird way, right? So by helping, and you know that when you help people out in the real world, you feel good about yourself also, right? And by helping Karl, he can sort of start beginning to forgive himself and sort of maybe slowly start to move on and forgive himself.
So the Polish gentleman that you had talked to that worked in the morgue for 40 years, did you take elements of his story to create Torben?
It was actually a Polish woman.
A
So
woman.
the guy that worked in the morgue for 40 years told us about this Polish woman, and I think Lasse and him got like had many calls like in Lasse's research of this. But he told us the story of a Polish woman who lost her husband and son at sea in a shipwreck, and they never recovered the body. So she was still to this day living like they could be out there, like in her mind they weren't gone. And that's why like this whole thing becomes so cathartic in a sense, because it's like, wow, that goodbye might be unpleasant and might be like a terrible thing to go through, but it's also really important in terms of like moving on.
You have two scenes, and technically the scenes are depicting the same thing. With Karl, well, okay, so when Karl walks in with Torben, and so Karl's thinking that's Torben's wife. And then the same scene is played with Torben walking in with Karl's wife. What was the significance of them counting to 3 before they opened up the coffin?
Because to me it was almost like two small kids, right? So and it they don't. I thought there was something just beautiful about these two elder men, and suddenly they're just small kids. Like this is the first time for them, first time going through this, and I thought that there was something beautiful about this, and it's absurd and still, and of course it's funny also, but they don't know what to do, and they sort of go back to their childhood in some way.
It's
So
almost rock paper scissors go. Do
yeah,
you do
yeah,
on
yeah,
shoot, or do you do it
yeah,
on
yeah. Um,
Well,
yeah,
you kind of surprised me because when they opened it up and it was Karl's wife, and the way that you did the camera shot from like inside the casket looking up towards Karl and Torben, I was sitting there waiting like, okay, they're going to open this up and it's not going to be her.
mm,
So there was a little bit of mystery there because you built up that moment. But in the end, your storytelling has this sense of beauty in the scene because you can feel Torben's compassion for Karl in that very moment. And I think right then and there, that's when they really started to bond with one another. Even though they weren't, even though Karl was still, he was still a little bit unsure between dealing with the grief, but then
mm,
there was this very tiny beginning of a friendship that was really going to blossom after the film.
yeah. And it's the first time that Carl believes that he doesn't have to do everything by himself. It's the first time he sort of let another person in. It's the first time he trusts this character. Um, so that's a perfect little development for him in it. Yeah.
Well, both wives, of course, Torben and Karl said that both of their wives, their favorite song was Night of Fortune. Why was this song used as the title of the film?
It just felt right. We tried different titles, and then we just came back to this. and it's also the first thing that sort of connects the two characters in the middle of the film. So it's the first thing that where Karl really opens up to Torben, and they find a connection together. So the song is a connection to those two characters, but it's also a connection to their wives they have lost.
And also, when Lasse first came with the idea of not the title, but using the song as like a common ground, that's a very big like Danish song from the 80s. And the way that I've always like depicted is like, oh, upbeat, happy, like disco-ish song. But when Lasse then showed me the lyrics of the song are like super profound and deep, and like when you hear them at the end, I still get goosebumps when watching it, because it's like it's a perfect little description of their situation. And I had no idea that the song carried that depth because of the format that it was in. But now with this, it's like it's almost a poetic ending in a sense.
It is. I had to look up the lyrics of the song, and I was reading the lyrics, and then there are the lyrics within the song that says, "Behind the door, where everything is possible, you will wait, very difficult to see." And I looked at the words, and all I could think of was Karl walking in to that cold room with the doctor, and then closing that door behind him. So what is the everything that is possible? Well, it's going to be grief, but love will always be there. He's going to have to learn to move on in life. And opening up the casket, that's the part that's the very difficult to see. So, but the song, it was a match made in heaven when it comes to film in a music score. And then there's a lyric in there that says, "The paths I follow always are death ends, but the stars, and say I will reach you in the end." That to me told me that one day Karl will see his wife again, and hopefully Torben will see his as well.
Yeah, for sure. And also, what I love about this song is also something general with grief. When you talk about the deceived, when you talk about the person, you can sort of also keep that person alive, and that's also one of the things I hope for people when they watch the film, that they're gonna talk about the people they have lost, because it's a way to keep their memory alive, and then you will never really lose them in some way. And I think the song also describes that beautifully, and also that could be a life where they meet each other again afterwards.
What has been the reaction to this film from audiences?
It's been quite amazing, I must say. We've had a lot of laugh, and the people have been really moved. We had a screening in France, in Clermont-Ferrand, at the festival down there, and I had this younger guy. He came up to me and he said, "Thank you, thank you. I didn't know I could laugh and cry at the same time, and now I'm gonna go call my grandmother and ask her if she's okay." So that was just the perfect for me. That's the perfect reaction, right? Because it means that it touched him, and he want to reach out and ask his loved ones that if they're okay. So that was just a perfect reaction.
Yeah, and the reaction everywhere. We were kind of scared in the beginning because, again, it's like you said, it's a way that we do things in Denmark, and also we allow laughter to be a part of this story. So we were kind of scared that, was this going to be too much for different cultures? And then we got we've been very lucky to travel all over the world with this film, and it's just never boring watching it in a theater. Like, people, the response has been, to me, like, it's unbelievable every time. Even yesterday we had a screening, and like, it doesn't matter if you have 20 people or you have 1,400 people. It's like you will get laughter, you will get emotion. And so I've been pretty overwhelmed by the reception, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
And I can relate to it. I mean, when my father passed away, you do go through that immediate grief, and then there's that where you have to plan the funeral. And then when you sit down to plan the funeral, then you actually end up with some laughter coming in, because you can actually think of your loved one. What are they going to say to all of this? Or or you laugh and you're making a big fuss over this, or well, maybe we need to make this a little bit flamboyant because we know how that person was. And so you kind of laugh about some little things that help you to get through that very difficult moment. And then even when people have their funerals, usually there's, someone that comes up to speak during the eulogy to kind of give some funny stories to just kind of lessen the grief and the pain during that time. So I think the way that you meshed the humor and the grief, but you really encapsulated both of those with this great sense of love within the film, which is why I can see why it has touched so many around the world.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been an amazing journey, and it's not over yet. And I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but for Lasse, like, just we're not good enough, especially in Scandinavia, to talk about like when subjects get really sore. So if this can even just inspire a few people, like to call their loved ones, we have in the end of the film there's a special thanks list with our grandparents on there, to kind of like, so this pays an homage to them as well. And hopefully it can inspire others to think of the stories like you did with your dad, and like kind of relive that, and not just look at it as a bad time in your life, but also a very cathartic and learning experience.
Well, how did you cast Karl and Torben? Their performances were truly amazing, and they were absolutely authentic.
Yeah. It actually, we can start with Karl, and we're from Denmark, and Karl is actually Swedish, and we were looking for a Danish actor in the beginning, but we just couldn't find the real character, the real actor for it. We couldn't find the one that really wanted to dedicate himself to it. So Christian asked me if we shouldn't send the script to Leif and Ray. We'd worked with him before, actually, on a commercial. So we sent it to Leif, and a couple of days later, he called me, and he was just amazed by the script. And he said that he'd cried every time he read it, and he'd just been through something very similar. So he just really wanted the part. So that just meant a lot to me. And of course, Leif and Ray, he's an amazing actor. Very method actor.
Very method, yeah.
Yeah.
But also, when we saw him in high school in a commercial, that's how we discovered him. So he's big in Sweden, but we didn't, obviously, because we're from Denmark, we didn't know. But he was so great in that commercial, and then obviously we got to work with him on a campaign of our own. And the way, to me at least, it's like his professionalism when he came, because let's face it, sometimes commercials, that's a payday for an actor, right? It is what it is, and we respect that. But then he came with the script, a 1-page script for a commercial, and he just had like notes scribbled down like on the side of the script, and had all these thoughts to Lasse in terms of directing. And then when we cast, we actually had, were very close with casting another Danish actor. But then this was kind of like, I thought to myself, and I asked Lasse, like, should we send it to Leif? Because he is kind of perfect for this. Like, obviously it requires some rewrites for Lasse because he's Swedish. So they kind of found this Danish-Swedish combination language.
Yeah.
But like, I'm so glad we did, because he's so good.
Actually, it also added something to the script and to the story, because he's now a Swedish guy living in Denmark. That means he's more alone, right? He's more fish out of water now. And often it is that the wives are handling the social system. So men are in general, not that good at reaching out or sort of preserving this social network you've created as man and wife. So so it actually added something to it. And with Torben, Jens Jørn, I was actually thinking a little bit about him when I wrote the script, but I didn't know if he could sing. So
or if it was possible, because he's a
very
big
busy,
actor in Denmark.
Yeah,
so.
very busy man. So we were actually asking the agent, and we had some other actors in, and then she suddenly said that he was available and he would like to read the script. So he read the script and he really liked it, and he's a perfectionist, really. So but I asked him in the end in our conversation, can you sing? And then he sang the song to me. And then I was just, oh, you're the guy. It was so beautiful. And yeah.
Well, that was a perfect audition. Now, for both of you, what does it mean to have your film Oscar shortlisted?
It's a dream come true. It's also pretty crazy. Now we've just been to LA and New York right now promoting the film, and it's amazing, and a lot of people get to see the film now. So
Not to mention like the amount of talent we're surrounded by in the 15th shortlist. And that's our heroes. Like, we grew up watching Wes Anderson films, and we when we started the company, so me and Lasse, we shared the production company. We started that 8 or 9 years ago, and as like this fun, far-fetched joke, something like a goal that was unattainable, we wrote a one-liner back in the day, like 9 years ago. We said, like, okay, every project, every film that we do, we treat as this was our tickets to the Oscars. And it's on our Instagram, and we forgot about it. We haven't talked about that for what, 5-6 years. And then all of a sudden, like, a girl that works for us, she said, like, did you realize that you wrote this on your Instagram, and now it's more true than ever? So we're like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's true. Like, we didn't. So I'm saying, like, we projected it very early on, but it is a childhood dream for sure.
Well, I love stories like that. And I'll tell you why. Not to be religious or spiritual or anything, but even in the Old Testament, in the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 2 to 3, it says, write down the vision, and that it will surely come to pass at a particular time, and just wait for it. And I love it when people write their dreams down and they look at it, they believe it. And sure, we may sometimes forget about it, but we took the time to write it down by faith. And then when it comes to pass, then you're like, oh my gosh. It's kind of like when Jim Carrey wrote out a fake check for $20 million.
Yeah.
So it was the same thing. It came to pass. So I love stories like this. And your film is absolutely magnificent. It deserves to be on the short list. And because I'm partial to independent filmmakers, Academy members, let's put this one on the nomination list. That's where it belongs. But for both of you, what advice would you give to those who are experiencing loss right now, and that the grief that goes along with it?
Grief, it ebbs and flows, and it comes in waves. You have bad days, but you will also have good days, and you got to remember that the good days are going to come, where things are a little more light. But also reach out and dare to talk about it. Dare to talk about it to your friends, to your family. Yeah, that's what
I
I'm going
like
to say.
that. And Christian?
Yeah, like Lasse said, this film all of a sudden became very personal. I had my granddad died while we shot the film, so I drove from our fake hospital to the real hospital. And there was a time when this situation, this goodbye scenario was going to happen, where it was a very hectic day on set. But I prioritized going there and seeing my dad and being in that room. And I remember like, and that's what I think Les also means is, I remember my aunt that came up to me, and I was like, I wouldn't say stoic, but I was just not emotional yet. It's like I had to go in, and then she gave me a big hug, and I see her once a year. It's not like it's not someone that I'm super close to, but she gave me like this heartfelt hug that only a family member could, and I just started crying. Like I had no control, and it takes a lot for me to cry, and I just think that gave like that hug. Remember to give that hug in that case, to share that love, I would say,
I
because it was
completely agree with that. And ladies and gentlemen, the Oscar shortlisted short film Night of Fortune is available to see right now. You can go to the New Yorker's website and watch it. It's an absolute wonderful film. And if you are one dealing with loss and the feelings of grief, well, just remember that grief is just love looking for a place to go. This film could help you find what you're looking for. Gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for sharing your wonderful film with us today. I think you have a film that is going to bring a lot of healing to a lot of people.
Thank you. That
Thank
was
you.
very beautiful said, what you said also. Great advice.
You're very, very welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, again, you can watch Night of Fortune. Just go to the New Yorker's website. We'll have that. It's on screen for you, so that way you know exactly where to go to watch this magnificent film. You can also catch all of the replays of our interviews with the top film directors and producers, screenwriters and actors, even more on our YouTube channel, Bond on Cinema. And we are available on a dozen audio platforms as well. So I want to thank you for watching and listening. And as for me, I hope to see you at the movies.